Like it goes every time I find a TikTok trend, I'm pretty late to making this iceberg video. Like, almost a year late. Regardless, I was very excited to take a look at this collection of trivia posted by someone AJZ on Reddit. This is also the perfect chance for me to use the Lavender Town song that I've had on my computer forever. I'll cue that up right now as we begin to dive into this Pokémon Iceberg. Shiny Pokémon. Starting in the second generation of games, rare Pokémon with alternate color schemes were added into the game. I couldn't find a real lore reason, but it's likely that in real life they were added to the game to flex the power of the Game Boy Color. Ekans backwards is Snake. This one's better if I just show it to you. Arbok backwards is Cobra. Lavender Town Syndrome. In 2010, a story began to be passed around that claimed that listening to the music of Gen 1's Spooky Town would give the player Lavender Town Syndrome, which left the children with headaches, nosebleeds, and even death in the form of taking their own lives. You've been listening to it the whole time though, and have you felt any symptoms? Probably not, cause it isn't true. Gary's Raticate dies on the SS Anne. In all of the Kanto-based Pokemon games, excluding Let's Go, you fight your rival Gary on the SS Anne, nothing special. It's when you meet him next at what is essentially the Pokemon graveyard that things get interesting. Between these two battles, despite not having a full team, he loses his Raticate. People say that due to the hustle and bustle of the cruise ship, he was unable to get it healed and it died, thus why he's in the graveyard at the first place. Jinx racism controversy. Many people have only ever seen the modern rendition of Jinx, not knowing that it was changed for resembling actors in blackface prior to localization outside Japan. Honestly, yeah, I don't blame them for making this change, if only they could do something about the rest of it though. Creepy Pokédex entries. A lot of Pokemon through the years have had some frightening Pokédex entries. These include, but are not limited to, Kadabra being a human boy before becoming a Pokemon, Phantump being the spirits of human boys before becoming a Pokemon, and Sandygast being the angry spirits of human boys before becoming a Pokemon. Mew under the truck. In the original Pokemon Red and Green and Blue, before getting on the SS Anne, there was a truck sitting just out of the reach of the player at that point in the game. Just like kids do, they fantasized about what might be under that truck, most popularly the mythical Pokemon Mew. This is particularly funny because there is an unrelated glitch that allows you to catch Mew. Missing No. Missing No scared a lot of children, and it is pretty weird and creepy, but I think it has earned its place in this tier. I mean, if it has its own Bulbapedia page, how spooky can it really be? Regardless, Missing No is the definitive glitch Pokemon from the original Pokemon games. If I stopped to talk about all the glitches that came along with it, we'd be here all day. For the sake of ease, I will steal Nintendo's official definition. Missing No is nothing more than a programming quirk. Real animals. This one's pretty fun, cause yeah, there technically are real animals. For the most part, we only see small animals such as fish or insects, but that doesn't stop things like this normal mongoose from existing. There is a trend of the farther into the show it gets, the less real-world animals they reference. Maybe they were tired of answering questions about it. The Porygon epilepsy incident. On December 16th, 1997, the episode Computer Warrior Porygon premiered in Japan. 20 minutes into the episode, Pikachu uses Thunderbolt on a set of missiles that then create a series of flashing lights that resulted in almost 700 kids being taken to hospitals, with about 1/4 of those being admitted, and at least 2 spending multiple weeks under the watch of healthcare professionals. Because of this, Pokemon went on a 4-month hiatus, Nintendo's stocks went down almost 5%, and Porygon took a solid break from appearing in the anime again. Cubone is a baby Kangaskhan. Yeah, I mean, I guess they look a little similar, but this adds a lot into complicating how Pokemon evolve. Maybe when a baby Kangaskhan holds the skull of its mother, it evolves into Marowak instead of Kangaskhan, kind of like Politoed needing the King's Rock. This doesn't change that Kangaskhan come out the gate with that baby, so it's really hard to look at the baby as its own creature. Ash is in a coma and all of his journey is a dream. This marks the beginning of a couple creepypasta type entries on this iceberg. This is supposed to explain things such as why Ash doesn't age and why there are so many Nurse Joys. Of course, an electricity-based coma is the most logical theory for a show that ran next to Crypto the Superdog. Ditto is a failed Mew clone. This one I believe, if only for how much the Pokemon Company lays into it. Before Mewtwo was made, there were plenty of failed clones of Mew. One of these totally had to be Ditto. I mean, they're the only two Pokemon that can learn Transform naturally, they have the same weight, same colors, and shiny colors, and the main place that you find Ditto is the pinnacle of Mew research in the Kanto region. Bill's Secret Garden. In the original Pokemon games, behind the house of a man named Bill, unreachable by the player, there was a large patch of grass that was rumored to contain super rare Pokemon unseen to the human eye. People spared no time to hack the game to get there, and there was nothing. Pokerus. Starting in Generation 2, there was a 1 in 21,845 chance that your Pokemon would fall ill with a disease called Pokerus. Though called an illness, it was actually quite beneficial, allowing your Pokemon to gain double the effort values that it would usually in battle. What is it actually? Well, canonically, it is a microscopic life form that attaches itself to your Pokemon. Gross. Wailord is less dense than air. According to a Reddit post made by Kyle 8 years ago, based on his length, weight, and height, Wailord would be anywhere from 3 times to only slightly less dense than air. Regardless, this trait did not pass on to the plush. Lost Silver. Creepypasta number 2 on our list is the haunted Pokemon Silver game, Lost Silver. It is a classic and came out at a big time for creepypastas, but looking back on it, it's just another over-the-top story throwing around blood and death in kids' media to frighten, kids. That said, it is an important part of internet history and I am not, so who am I to judge? Glitch City. In the original Pokemon games, committing a series of highly specific actions in the Safari Zone will lead the player to walking into this monstrosity. Honestly, looking at the Psychic-type Pokemon in these games, I think Glitch City is one of the least broken things you have to worry about when revisiting. Peekaboo. Peekaboo is Marill. Next. The Ghost Girl from X and Y. In Kalos' Luminos City, there's a mysterious cutscene. There's a building that, on its second floor, has a woman who appears from thin air, floats without moving her legs, and claims that the player is not the one before going away forever. When asked, Junichi Masuda said that they never coded anything like that into the game. Weird egg group pairings. To breed 2 Pokemon, they need to be in the same egg group. An egg group is just another way of categorizing Pokemon. These include things like monster, field, or human-like. In some of these, particularly the field group, the sheer amount of Pokemon in them results in some weird pairings. The most common of these brought up is Wailord and Skitty, which speaks for itself, but I think it's pretty funny that this weirdness also applies to Charizard and Magikarp. The inside of a Pokeball. According to Junichi Masuda, he believes that it is very comfortable inside a Pokeball. It's a very comfortable environment, maybe the equivalent of a high-end suite room in a fancy hotel. Buried Alive and White Hand. Our next creepypasta claims that originally, instead of fighting a Marowak at the top of the Pokemon Tower, you would fight Buried Alive, which is a trainer who also happens to be a corpse. He or she would have had 2 normal Pokemon, Gengar and Muck, and 2 of a Pokemon named White Hand, which is supposed to be part of the spooky aspect of the story. The legendary beasts were originally Jolteon, Flareon, and Vaporeon. The legendary beasts, Raikou, Entei, and Suicune, were said to be 3 Pokemon who were revived by Ho-Oh after the burning of Ecruteak City's Brass Tower. In the anime, there is a silhouette of 3 dog-like Pokemon that resemble nothing we've seen before, but many say that they used to be Jolteon, Flareon, and Vaporeon, who took on a new form thanks to Ho-Oh. Uri Geller's Sue over Kadabra. Uri Geller, the TV magician, sued Nintendo in 2000, saying they turned his likeness into an evil occult Pokemon character. Because of this, Kadabra was unable to be printed on Pokemon cards. In November of 2020 though, they came to an agreement allowing for the cards to be printed again. He tweeted, "It's now all up to Nintendo to bring my #Kadabra #Pokemon card back. It'll probably be one of the rarest cards now." Even as it came to an end, he couldn't entirely get over himself. Pokemon revealed prior to their generation. This is exactly as the name sounds. There were many Pokemon who appeared in Pokemon media before their generation of games were released. These were probably most common in the anime, like Ho-Oh in the first episode and Donphan in the first movie, but this also happened in games like Munchlax and Bonsly in Pokemon XD, released the year before Diamond and Pearl. This is a super fun topic, and if anything, this is what I would recommend doing further research on personally. Professor Oak's Battle. In the original Pokemon games, there was supposed to be a final battle against Professor Oak, similar to Red in Generation 2. He would have a team of by far the strongest Pokemon you've seen, including the starter Pokemon that was left behind at the beginning of the game. The Great Pokemon War. The Vermilion City gym leader in the Kanto region references a war in which he was saved by an electric-type Pokemon. While this is all we were ever given, people have created theories such as this being why Red and Blue don't have dads, or why there aren't people in the ages of 30 to 50 in the region. I hadn't noticed, but that's pretty interesting, I guess. Bad Egg. The bad egg is the result of a corruption of Pokemon data where the checksum does not match with the data's calculations. Essentially, it's Gen 3 through Gen 6's way of punishing people for messing with game data. The punishment is hammered in by the bad egg never hatching and not being able to be released. I learned this lesson the hard way in Pokemon Platinum when I got my first action replay. Capsule Monsters. This is in reference to Tajiri's earliest design concept of Pokemon, where you would recruit monsters instead of catching them. From this came designs for many Pokemon such as Rhydon and Gengar. That, or it's in reference to the Yu-Gi-Oh spin-off that never quite hit the mark. Butterfree and Venomoth have their evolutionary lines swapped. If I were to show you these two Pokemon and ask you to match them to their evolutions, could you do it? If you guessed this, you'd be wrong, but you probably shouldn't be. It could have been an accident, or maybe even just a coincidence. That is something better taken up with Ken Sugimori and not the guy making Iceberg videos on YouTube. Jirachi on the Moon. In Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, there is a space station in Moss Deep City. In the lab, there is a scientist who will tell you how many rockets the station has launched. This is a way of telling the player how many weeks they've been playing, as they launch one rocket every week. Rumor had it that after a certain amount of rocket launches, the player would be invited to go to space and then would be able to fight Jirachi and or Deoxys. Of all rumors Pokemon has ever had, none quite devoured my free time like this one. Bird type. In the beta version of Pokemon Red and Green, instead of having a flying type as we know it today, there was the bird type. This is only still present in Missing No, which will carry on the bird type legacy forever. Giovanni's Suicide. In a Celebi-based event in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the player goes back in time and gets to fight Giovanni after he is defeated in the events of Red and Blue. After being defeated again, many people think that Giovanni leaves the cave and takes his own life, which results in the loud noise and the lack of communication in the future. Not only is this probably a little too blatantly dark for Pokemon, but he shows up multiple times in later games that are proven to be farther along chronologically. Other Pokegods. Before Pokemon Gold and Silver came out, there were a lot of theories about what came after the original 150. In a usual playground rumor fashion, unlocking these godly, unbeatable Pokemon required an elaborate series of tasks that even if completed, the child working would be sorely disappointed. Except for Mew 3, my uncle taught me how to catch that one. The real Wobbuffet is the tail. The common theory for Wobbuffet is that instead of the blue portion of the Pokemon being sentient, it's actually the tail, the part with the visible eyes, and the blue part is only a substitute. This also falls in line with Wobbuffet's insane endurance. That being said, one of the Let's Find Pokemon books tells a slightly different story. In this, the two entities interact. I think they know what they're doing and they're just messing with us. Genesect was a Kabutops. When I first read this one, I thought it was just going to talk about how they have a similar shape, but these Pokédex entries do raise an eyebrow. According to the Pokédex in Pokemon Black, Kabuto, and assumingly Kabutops, lived 300 million years ago. In the same game, Genesect is said to have been a strong hunter 300 million years ago, who was then later altered by Team Plasma. Censored sprites. Throughout the many years that Pokemon games have been coming out, there's been a lot of censorship when it comes to releasing overseas. Many of these were to remove gestures that may not be appropriate in other countries, like religious symbols, but some are more funny, like lengthening skirts or taking out winks. Spinda patterns. The Pokemon Spinda is known for the fun and varying patterns of spots that it has, even being said that no two Spindas are alike. Of course, statistically that isn't true, as there are only about 4,294,967,296 different patterns, as they're based on personality values for the specific Pokemon. Somebody should write an email to Game Freak and ask them to fix that one. Gengar is Clefable's shadow. This theory is based on the similar physical qualities of Clefable and Gengar. It is theorized that Gengar is the evil shadow of Clefable, but with the inclusion of Clefairy, Ghastly, and Haunter, things start getting weird. Shiny Pokemon in Generation 1. Technically, the Pokemon aren't shiny in Generation 1, but that does not mean that a Pokemon from this generation won't be shiny when transferred to a newer game. This is because being shiny is based on a lot of values that are present in Generation 1, and they activate this dormant shiny gene when the Pokemon is transferred to a compatible game. I think that's how it works, at least. There is a lot of numbers involved. Other glitch Pokemon. If this is in reference to the rest of the glitch Pokemon in Generation 1, there are way too many to talk about. Like, there are 66 other glitch Pokemon with names ranging from to N is a Zoroark. This one's pretty fun because fans have a lot of evidence to back up their theories. I'll only leave it to my favorite, which is when you follow this Zoroark into N's castle, it disappears and all you find is N in its place. Spooky stuff. Uncatchable shinies. Anytime a Pokemon battle is initiated, the Pokemon can be shiny. This applies even if the player is not involved. The most common form of uncatchable shiny is shiny Pokemon found during catching tutorials, whether it be the Pokemon the trainer is teaching the player has, or the one they're catching. Even if the player is in battle, there are some Pokemon that just can't be caught, like any battle before you get Pokeballs, or even something like the Marowak ghost in Lavender Town. Mirage Island. Possibly my favorite addition to this iceberg, Mirage Island is one of the few 100% intentional features. In the Hoenn region, there is an island where the player can only capture the Pokemon Wynaut. The Pokemon itself is not special, but more the chances that you can get it. Based on 2 random digits changed by the game daily, and the personality value of the Pokemon in your party, there is a 1 in 10,923 chance Mirage Island will appear on Route 130. Intentional, yet still mysterious. The Hall of Origin. The Hall of Origin is the event location in the Sinnoh region where Arceus is caught. I believe its placement on this iceberg is based on how the large staircase ending with Arceus, the equivalent of God in Pokemon, has some serious religious symbolism. Soft locks. There are a lot of soft locks in Pokemon. Some are more likely to happen, such as training your starter Pokemon too much before delivering Oak's parcel and not having the game give you a Pokédex, or something really crazy like in a Pigasper Yellow video. Rhydon was the first Pokemon. This was actually referenced in a topic earlier when I said that Pokemon's original concept was Capsule Monsters, and Rhydon was originally shown as a capsule monster. Because they already had the design started, they polished it and Rhydon was then born as the first ever designed Pokemon. Weird measurements in the Pokédex. This is probably in reference to how the anime treats Pokemon size, where the artists focus on the importance of fitting Pokemon in the story, rather than making them accurate to their Pokédex entries. I wouldn't blame them though. If we stuck to the Pokédex too hard, Ash would die the first time that we saw the hot as the sun Pokemon Macargo. Drunk Old Man in Viridian City. At the beginning of Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, the player is blocked in the street by a man who is passed out drunk. This is made funnier by the fact that it was changed to a grumpy man who didn't want to talk to anyone before he had his coffee. Fire starters are based on the Chinese zodiac. As of now, all fire starters can be linked to an animal in the Chinese zodiac. Charizard the dragon, Typhlosion the rat, Blaziken the rooster, Infernape the monkey, Emboar the pig, Delphox the dog, Incineroar the tiger, and now Cinderace the rabbit. This is actually really cool, and I'll be sure to think of it next time starters are going to be revealed. Other banned anime episodes. While there were many episodes not aired or postponed due to natural disasters, and even temporarily removing episodes after the attacks occurring on September 11th, 2001, there were 3 episodes banned by 4 kids for more unique reasons, however. The first was banned for breasts, the second for blasters, and the third for black misrepresentation. There was also one episode banned by the Pokemon Company themselves within the past 3 years, for the fear of people thinking that famous children's hero Ash was wearing blackface. Evolved but underleveled NPC Pokémon. While it's always been a joke that Lance was hacking in Gold and Silver to get those underleveled Dragonites, there are actually a few trainers who use these kind of Pokemon. Some people make theories that there is something malicious going on, but in reality, a lot of these Pokemon are available to the player in the wild, even though they are rare. Missing No in Lumio City. In 2013, a video game news website said that it was possible to see a shape that resembled that of Missing No the glitch Pokemon in Pokemon X and Y. And I'll give it to him, this shape does look a lot like Missing No. Luckily though, as researched by YouTuber Shesez, it is just a very, very funny coincidence. Koffing and Weezing's original names. Originally, these 2 poison gas Pokemon were going to be named NY and LA in English, as a reference to 2 of America's bigger cities. I don't want to spoil anything, but I do wish that this was the only time Koffing would appear on this iceberg. Changed Shinies. Throughout the past 25 years, a lot of Pokemon have gone through color alterations, but less so have Pokemon changed only their Shinies. Most notable of these is Shiny Charizard going from purple to black, and Rapidash going from purple flames to blue flames. Surfable and fishable statues. When placing tiles in the original Pokemon games, the programmers needed to make sure the tile themselves knew what they were. They would tell grass tiles, hey, you're grass, or tell water that it was water. For these statues, found in every gym and Elite Four room, Game Freak forgot to send them the memo, so they treat themselves just like water. Unknown King. This is very impressive, as it's one of the only things on this list that I had absolutely no clue about before making the video. Just by looking at the name, I could assume it was a creepypasta, and it is, but it's something new nonetheless. As a creepypasta, however, it gets the skim-through treatment. Basically, another kid gets another creepy Pokemon Silver, then he summons a new Pokemon, the Unknown King. This Pokemon can't be stopped and kills all of his Pokemon. Does this make Unknown King a Pokegod? Alchemy inspirations in Sun and Moon. As Pokemon Sun and Moon approached in 2016, a lot of players began to see connections between the starter Pokemon and symbolism of the core elements of alchemy. This was further pushed when the games came out, and 1 million more reasons linked with chimeras, artificial Pokemon, and even a reference to Full Metal Alchemist. It feels wrong to not tell you the whole story, but I also can't do it justice with my allotted time, so I'll post some links in the description. Tweaking and the Void. Generation 4 has a glitch that allows the player to ruin the graphics of any given area. This glitch is called tweaking. At its simplest, to accomplish this, the player simply needs to go fast enough to make the game tiles confused. Using this glitch, players are able to access a location called the Void. The Void only serves a purpose in Diamond and Pearl, but the purpose it serves is pretty cool. Using proper movement when entering the vast empty void, players managed to access event-only areas within the game. This allowed for the catching of Darkrai, Cresselia, Shaman, and even Arceus without the needed event items. It is also likely that the character may reach the backrooms equivalent of the overworld known as Fake Sinnoh, which is an infinitely looping recreation of the region deep in the void. Gastly is a dead cloister. A lot of people say that Gastly is a dead cloister. Gastly and Cloyster do have similar faces, but no matter how much you tell me that Gastly's cloud is to make up for the lack of shell, I won't believe it. Does this mean that it goes Shelder into Cloyster into Gastly into Haunter into Gengar? Mindy's Haunter. Mindy is an NPC hated by many Pokemon fans for a trade in the Sinnoh region where she trades a Haunter to the player. Haunter evolves through trade, so getting a Gengar for Medicham is pretty nice. Unfortunately, the Haunter holds an Everstone that stops it from evolving, and knowing this, Mindy mocks you after the trade. I thought it was funny, but the general public hated her enough to make their own subreddit based on it that I will not be sharing the name of here. Voltorb is a Pokeball possessed by Haunter. If you thought that we weren't going to have a second Haunter and third Gastly line topic, you would be wrong. Anyways, Voltorb looks like a Pokeball and has the same eyes as Haunter. I don't want to sit on this one too much, the Gastly line is already way too complicated and we still have a long ways to go. Azurill to Marill sex change. Azurill is the only Pokemon to have a higher chance of being female than its evolutions, while your Azurill has a 75% chance to be female, and Marill only has 50%. The difference caused a glitch fixed in Generation 6 where Azurill would change gender when evolving. Diamond Dust Easter Egg. On special days in Pokemon, the snow that falls in certain locations is replaced with diamond dust. This pretty Easter egg began in Diamond and Pearl and has been seen all the way up until Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. The diamond dust would fall for events such as Masuda's birthday, Pokemon's birthday, and even the release of games. The separation between Pokemon and mankind. In Sinnoh folktales, there were two stories that talk about a time where Pokemon and humans were not so different. The first tells of a Pokemon who evolves into a human, and the second tells of a time when humans and Pokemon were indistinguishable and would even eat at the same table according to the English translation, and marry according to the Japanese. Even though that doesn't seem to come up now anymore, it's not unheard of, like with the woman in Pokemon Coliseum who says she's dating her Mightyena. PETA Flash Games. PETA, the notable not-to-be-taken-seriously organization, had a reputation for releasing flash games to call out popular video games for unethical practices. Arguably, the most popular of these was Pokémon Black and Blue, a game about simultaneously freeing Pokémon from capture and teaching kids that Nintendo endorses animal fighting. Despite Nintendo and the public's less than pleased response, PETA released another one that never really took off as it lost its only selling point, which was the shock factor. Pokeball Planetoid in Super Mario Galaxy. Floating in the Bowie-based galaxy in Super Mario Galaxy is an aquatic dome that people say looks a lot like a Pokeball. I see what they're saying, but also I never thought of that comparison when I was playing as a child. Strange Souvenir. After seeing a mysterious backpacker 4 different times throughout hotels in Kalos, he gives the player a totem and says that it's from a region far away. This region would end up being the next generation's Alola region, where the totem is purchasable at the thrift store. Pun in the original name of Curse. Curse is the only Pokemon move with the question mark type until Gen 5. It's the only move in the game that does something different depending on the type of Pokemon using it, which is mysterious because the only type that does something special is the Ghost type. Ghost type Pokemon curse the opponent and do chip damage, while other Pokemon who use it are slowed. As for puns, the effect of the move is based on the Japanese name Noroi, which can mean either curse, like what Ghost Pokemon do, or slow, as in what other Pokemon do. Machoke's skin is being ripped open by its muscles. A lot of people believe that these red marks on Machoke's arms are his muscles tearing through his flesh, though no official sources that I can find back this up. Hate to hear it though. Silent Hill. The Johto region's Newbark town was initially called Silent Hills, but less than a year before the game was released, the horror game Silent Hill was released, and Pokemon had to make some quick changes. Sinnoh's old chateau and its ghosts. The old chateau is an abandoned building on the outskirts of the Eterna Forest. When inside, the player has the possibility of having a couple different sightings of ghosts or mysterious glowing red eyes. These eyes are presumed to be Gengar, as it's the only place to catch one, but we can't say that about the other ghosts. This is also where the player gets Rotom, which has the power to possess appliances like a poltergeist. Munna foreshadowed in Gen 1. In the first Pokemon games, a picnicker named Carol says she wishes there was a pink Pokemon with a floral pattern. When a pink Pokemon with this pattern was released, Munna, fans took it and ran. This was until an interview with Ken Sugimori revealed that actually Musharna, the evolution, was designed first, and Munna was just made to match it. Not taking this inspiration from earlier games. This was solidified by giving other examples of Pokemon who were inspired by earlier games. Electabuzz with 6 fingers. In Pokemon Stadium, the Pokemon Electabuzz, famous for its 5 fingers, was given 6 fingers. Sadly, this change was not permanent because I think Electabuzz would be even cooler if they had kept it. Deoxys and Starmie are related. A smaller theory, but still an interesting one, claims that Deoxys and Starmie are related, as they are both psychic Pokemon with ties to space. They also both have a gem at their center used for similar purposes. The people who support this theory stand by it adamantly, and I think it's pretty cool, but I can't say I'm fully convinced. Gold and Silver 1997 Space World Beta. In 2018, the playable demo from 1997's Space World build of the Generation 2 Pokemon games were released to the public. While there were a lot of gameplay changes and stuff, what really matters is the Pokemon that we lost along the way, which I have put into a montage for you. Gold and Silver 1999 Space World demo. This demo is way closer to the final game, but does still have some of the fun stuff left over from 1997. I'd love another montage, but honestly, I might get emotional seeing this guy again. Pikachu gets angry at PlayStation. In the Nintendo 64 spin-off Hey You Pikachu, the player is able to use a microphone to communicate with Pikachu. A picture went around where Pikachu got angry when the player would say PlayStation or Sony, but this was proven to be false. Cuttable Grass in old generations. Until Generation 4, players could actually use the move Cut outside of battle to get rid of the tall grass where wild Pokemon hid. After Gen 4 though, it was limited to its main use, cutting trees. Burger King Pokemon Container Recall. In 1999 and 2000, Burger King had to recall kids' meal toys, not for the toys themselves, but for the Pokeball-shaped containers that kept keychains. This was due to multiple children getting them sealed to their mouths and suffocating, with at least one death. This was a very interesting topic, and if you'd like to learn more about it, I will link to a video by L Supersonic Q in the description. Latiazakin. Concept art and beta forms of Pokemon are something that fans like me get super excited about, and Latiazakin is one of those situations. The Pokemon depicted is assumed to be a beta Blaziken, as that's what it mostly resembles, but it also shares a lot of traits with Latias, and it's assumed that the Pokemon was split into the two. Maybe this is what beta Torchic's final evolution looked like. Albino Pokémon. In Pokemon X and Y, upon first releasing, there was a glitch that resulted in Pokemon becoming black and white. Many people spread that this was a new super rare type of Pokemon, while more rational individuals referred to this as what it was, just a glitch. This was largely forgotten though, as at the same time there was some serious game-breaking glitches. Teehee Woman's Secret. A Pokemon trainer, specifically a swimmer, asks the player where she keeps her Pokeballs if she's in a bikini before answering her own question with quote, "Teehee Woman's Secret," end quote. Super Smash Bros. Brawl cat poster. In the stage Pokemon Stadium 2, while in its ice form, a small house with a picture of a cat inside can be seen. Despite updated visuals for newer games, the cat is still going strong. Ultraman was a major inspiration for Pokemon. Fans of the show Ultraman would be able to see a lot of inspirations that Pokemon took from the show. While there are a lot of things that people point out when discussing this topic, one that comes up the most is the idea of capturing monsters in capsules being mentioned for a prequel series to Ultraman. Ghost Girl in Phoebe's room. In Pokemon Ultra Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, when fighting the Elite Four Ghost Trainer, Phoebe, when the screen fades to black for the battle, there is a very short amount of time where you can see a young girl appear, sitting in the chair behind Phoebe. This is a lot less commonly brought up than the X and Y Ghost Girl, as for this one, if you blink, you'll miss it. Pokemon's alleged effects on the human brain. Just like the media always said, Pokemon changed the brains of its fans forever. According to Stanford scientists and published in the journal Nature Human Behavior, longtime Pokemon fans actually had a specific part of the brain process Pokemon imagery. Pictures of Pokemon were shown to 11 fans and 11 non-fans to results that one could expect. Fans could name the Pokemon while non-fans couldn't. What was special was the consistency of brain activity location in fans. So, if you are a fan, you can proudly say that you're using that specific patch of brain for a pretty good purpose. Cubone is an ill Charmander. What if the skull Cubone wears wasn't a Kangaskhan, but instead a Charizard? The little nubs on top line up, and also the shape of Charmander and Cubone is pretty similar. The reason it would be ill is because the lack of a flame, which is more than likely caused by not having a mother to protect it. Koffing in a Holocaust Museum. Koffing is known as the poison gas Pokemon. This category of Pokemon was the last thing that fans wanted to see when playing around or in the Holocaust Museum. Management was already unhappy to have people playing a Pokemon game in a place meant for honoring the victims of the travesties of the Second World War, but having the poison gas Pokemon make an appearance prompted the museum to contact Niantic and ask them to have their location removed from the game. Pikachurin. No amount of college biology or perception class has taught me how to read the article or actually explain what Pikachurin does. Essentially, all we need to know is that Pikachurin is a somewhat recently discovered protein in the human body named after Pikachu, as Pikachu's lightning-fast movements and electric effects perfectly describe the nimble protein. Takeshi Shudo's original idea for the anime ending. Takeshi Shudo was a vital part to the early years of the Pokemon anime, even being credited for Team Rocket's iconic motto. For this topic, we'll focus on Shudo's desire to add darker storylines to Pokemon, which was evident when he made Ash, die in the first movie. Along with this, he wanted to have the show end with a PETA-esque uprising of Pokemon that resulted in a confrontation between Ash and Pikachu. Not only would this have changed all of Pokemon up to this point, but would have also stopped everything that happened after. Shudo could have had his own video just describing his contributions to Pokemon and how Pokemon affected both his mental and physical health, but sadly, I don't have that time today, so let's move on. Carcinogenic gene originally named Pokemon. In 2005, scientist Pier Paolo Pandolfi discovered a cancer-causing protein and decided to name it Pokemon. Not wanting one of their largest properties to be associated with causing cancer, Nintendo swiftly put a stop to it, and now the protein is named ZBTB7. Toby Fox based the Battle Tower theme on The Baby Is You. Toby Fox, the creator of the immensely popular game Undertale, was commissioned by Pokemon to create a theme for the Sword and Shield Battle Tower. This was an insane accomplishment for an indie game developer, but it's no surprise considering his composing talent. In 2011, this was used to create a rock ballad about characters from the comic Homestuck. Comparing them both, you can see that he used part of his 10-year-old rock ballad to inspire his official Pokemon song. Aerodactylus. Aerodactylus is a genus containing only one species known as Aerodactylus scoloposiops. The modern naming for this genus did not come until 2013, where Aerodactylus was chosen due to both the Greek word for wind finger and the Pokemon Aerodactyl, whose design was based on what we knew of these pterosaurian birds at the time. It's pretty cool that the Pokemon was based on the animal, and then the name for the animal was changed to match the Pokemon. Censored trans woman in X and Y. In Pokemon X and Y, there is a female trainer who, after being beaten, claims that she used to be a black belt. If you only see the English translation, there'd be nothing special. Seeing the original Japanese translation though, it reads, "I was a karate king half a year ago. The power of medical science is awesome, wouldn't you say?" implying a sex change that the character went through. This is further solidified in both games by Karate King and Black Belt being the names for a male class of trainers. If they had kept that half in, I wonder why they didn't keep the medical science comment too. Pokemon is now 0-2 in trans rights after this and the erasure of Azurill deciding to be their true self. Tentaquill. In July of 2010, members of the Pokemon forums on 4chan were challenged to draw their favorite Pokemon by memory. One anonymous user understood their assignment and posted their drawing of this Pokemon. The drawing is funny both because of the quality and its lack of accuracy to any real Pokemon. The meme was solidified, however, when the user confidently told others that the Pokemon was named Tentaquill, which is not a real Pokemon. Tentaquill has since become a huge meme among Pokemon fans, even showing up in fan games with his signature attack of throwing up blood. Mario theme song in Generation 5 Thrash. The move Thrash in Pokemon involves the user flailing around and hitting the enemy multiple times. In the 5th generation, these hits strike with the same rhythm of the Super Mario Bros. Theme song. Better to show than tell, so this is what I mean. I and V Shiny Unknown. Unknown is a Pokemon that comes in different forms for each letter of the alphabet, and exclamation points and question marks. What letter the unknown is used to be determined by the same stats that determined if a Pokemon was shiny. This weird combination of stats led to only the unknowns shaped like I and V being able to be shiny. This is particularly funny because the stats that determined shininess were called IVs. Pikachu was going to be localized in America as a big-breasted tiger. Japan was not happy with some of the changes that American PR for Nintendo wanted to make. One of these was to make Pikachu a well-endowed tiger because too many Pokemon were cute and wouldn't sell in America. This is funny, but it does sting to be reminded of my favorite electric tiger that never was. Yoshi as a Pokemon. An April 1999 issue of Expert Gamer magazine revealed a secret in Pokemon Red and Blue that Dragonite evolves into Yoshi from the Super Mario Bros. Series. This method involved training a Dratini, training that Dratini in a different game into Dragonite, trading it back, and giving it a Firestone in the same location where Mewtwo resides. User Gaming Prime's Special Edition. In 2014, a Reddit user named Gaming Prime shared their experience where their Pokemon X and Y was having a series of unnerving graphical glitches. When taken to Nintendo, they wiped all the data from the game and said that should be fine. It was not, and the graphical glitches only got creepier. Eventually, Gaming Prime learned that their handheld was the problem and was able to get things fixed, not before losing their Pokemon and losing their ability to sleep at night. And that's it. This was certainly the longest video I've ever worked on, which is funny because I assumed it was going to be a short one. 40 pages later though, I have learned my lesson. Speaking of learning, whether you are an old Pokemon fan or new, I hope you were able to learn something new because I know I sure did. And hopefully there is more out there for us to learn looking forward. Until that time comes, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It is free, so you'll always get your money's worth.